Welcome back to Dulce's Kitchen. On today's video, I'm going to be making tres leches. For this recipe, there's going to be 3 parts: the cake, the milks, and the frosting. So let's get started. For this recipe, you're going to need 1 2/3 cups of all-purpose flour, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. You're going to need 3/4 cup of white sugar, 3/4 cup of unsalted butter at room temperature. You're going to need a 1/2 cup of just regular milk, then a 1/2 cup of sour cream, 3 eggs, and 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. So for the cake, you're going to need your dry ingredients and your wet ingredients. So we're going to start off with the wet ingredients. Here I have the 3/4 cup of unsalted butter. I'm going to add that to a small bowl for the wet ingredients. So you're just gonna go ahead and beat the butter by itself first until it gets like softer. Now, since the butter got all over the bowl, I'm just gonna scrape down the sides so then everything can come to the middle again. And I'm gonna continue stirring. Continue mixing until it becomes like pale. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but my butter's a lot more like lighter in color, so I'm just gonna scrape on the sides once again. Now what you're gonna want to do is add 1/2 of your sugar to the butter mixture and then continue stirring. Now add the rest of your sugar. Once it looks crumbly like this, you're gonna scrape down the sides once again. It should kind of feel like sandy, like wet sand. And then now you're going to add your eggs, but you're gonna add 1 at a time, mixing in between like each time you add an egg. So just add 1 of your eggs and continue stirring. Now once everything is well mixed, scrape down once again. Make sure everything is well combined and it should still feel like wet sand. So now you're going to add 1/2 of your milk. You can also add your milk slowly while you're mixing, but I just like to take my time with the process, so you can do whatever you want though. Mix for like 30 seconds. Add in the rest of your milk. It should start to look like cottage cheese kind of. Once you finish mixing, add all of your sour cream. I'm just gonna scoop it down. For this part, you can go ahead and mix it with just a spatula or a whisk so it doesn't get too liquidy. So just mix for a few seconds as well. Now add in your vanilla extract and continue stirring. Once you finish, it should be like this, like really chunky and stuff, but that's totally fine. Now get a big bowl and add all of your flour. This is going to be the combination of everything. Add in the salt, baking soda, and baking powder to your flour. Now we're gonna go ahead and add our wet ingredients to the bowl. For this part, I'm just gonna use a spatula so it doesn't get too runny or anything, just to make sure it stays at a good consistency. Now that we've finished with the batter of the cake, all we have to do is put it in the oven and then do our milk and then do our frosting. So for the cake, I'm gonna be using an 8 by 11 inch pan. Since tres leches, everything you do is in one pan because you put the milks in the pan that it's baked with. I'm just gonna be using this and then continue with the other process. I'm gonna be using some spray for my pan, but you can also use butter and flour it so it doesn't stick. So you can either do one of those. I'm just taking a paper towel so then there's not like too much oil in some spots, and just making sure that everything is everywhere. Now all we gotta do is add in our batter in the pan. And you should definitely use a spatula for this part, so you make sure that you get like every drop of the batter in the pan. So I was gonna take a spatula to spread all the batter evenly, so then it bakes perfectly flat. Just give your pan a little jiggle so then it can get rid of any air bubbles. Now we're gonna bake your cake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 176 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. I'm gonna come back to you guys once the cake is done. Hello guys, so I'm back. My cake has already finished baking in the oven, and I let it rest in the oven for about 2 hours after it was done so that it can cool down. You can also let your cake set in the fridge so that it can cool down faster. I also have my cake already set on a board so then I can cut off the edges so that the milk can fully get into the cake. For the milk, I have some evaporated milk, some condensed milk, and I also have some whole milk. This is also 1 cup of whole milk. I also have 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla just to add some flavor to the cake, but it's just totally optional. I have a whisk to mix up all of the milks, and I have a fork to poke holes in the cake so then it could absorb all the milk. Here I have the bowl to mix all the milks, and I have some plastic wrap to cover the cake when we let it set in the fridge. Make sure you be careful with this part because we do need a knife to cut off the edges, so ask your parents to make sure this is okay. So now I'm gonna cut the edges of my cake, and I'll come back to you guys once I'm done. So I'm back. I finished cutting all the edges already. You can, if you want, cut the top and the bottom off, but in my case, I'm just gonna leave it. Now I'm gonna transfer my cake back to the other pan so then we could go ahead and get started on the milks. So now I already finished transferring the cake to the other pan. Now we're gonna get started on the milks, and I'm gonna start off by adding the evaporated milk first. Now I'm gonna add in the whole milk. And lastly, the condensed milk. Make sure you guys are only using 1 can for each of the evaporated and the condensed milk, and for the whole milk, it's 1 cup. Now add in the 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. So now I have everything in the bowl. I'm gonna go ahead and combine it with the whisk. And by the way, all of the condensed milk sinks to the bottom, so make sure that you mixed very well, because you don't want any clumps of condensed milk or anything like that. Continue mixing until your whisk becomes clean and not with clumps, like this. This process takes about like 1 minute. So now that my whisk is clean, we're gonna start with poking holes in the cake. So I just set the milk to the side. Now I'm gonna get my fork and poke holes on the whole entire cake. Just poke holes on the whole entire cake, so then it's easier for the cake to absorb all the milk. So I transferred my milks to a measuring cup, so then it's easier for me to pour onto the cake, which I definitely recommend. So now I'm gonna go ahead and start. Make sure that you guys are adding the milk slowly so that it doesn't rush and it doesn't get mushy or anything. So just give it about a minute in between each portion so then it absorbs all the milk. So I actually got a spoon so it's easier for me to pour so then it doesn't get mushy or anything. So I'm gonna continue with the second portion of pouring in the milk. So I finished pouring all of the milks inside of the cake. It's looking like this, incredibly soaked. So now I'm gonna wrap it in the plastic and let it sit for about 3 to 7 hours, depending on how long you want it to sit. So I'm gonna come back to you guys once my cake is fully refrigerated for about 3 to 4 hours. Hello, I'm back. So I decided to let my cake rest in the fridge for overnight instead, so the results are better. So here is my cake right now. Here it is. The milk is still at the bottom, but that's totally fine. I took off the wrap already, so now we're on our last step, which is the frosting. For the frosting, I'm gonna be making a dulce de leche frosting, but you guys can totally make a regular frosting or any type you want. So for the frosting, you're gonna need 2 cups of heavy whipping cream. I have about 3/4 cup of dulce de leche, and I also put some in a small little plastic bag to pipe some on top once we're done. I also have about like 1 tablespoon or like a half tablespoon of powdered sugar just so it can thicken up a little bit. Here I also have some fresh berries just to put on top for a garnish, and I also have a ice cream scooper to scoop on the frosting to the cake and a spatula for the frosting. You're also gonna need a mixer for this step. I have mine right over here. So I'm gonna start off by adding the heavy whipping cream to a bigger bowl. Now you're just gonna whip it up until you get stiff peaks for about like 2 minutes or so. I'm doing this on high speed. So it's not done yet, but once you get to a texture like that's like still a little like thin, you're going to add in your powdered sugar. So this is to thicken it up, so it makes the process a little faster. So I have reached stiff peaks, but make sure you do not overmix, because then since heavy cream does become butter, it's going to separate and you don't want that. So now we're going to add in the dulce de leche. Since dulce de leche is pretty thick, I'm going to use a mixer only for like 40 seconds or so, because we don't want it to become butter. So I am now done. I'm just going to scrape on the sides, and my frosting is like a light brown color now because of the dulce de leche. So just scrape on the bowl and get everything, make sure everything's well combined. So now that I am done with the frosting, I got a little spoon just to take a little taste and see if it's missing anything. I think it's good. It tastes very good. So now that we're done with the frosting and I have my cake already right here, I'm just going to take my ice cream scooper and scoop on the frosting. Okay, so now I'm gonna start. You don't have to use an ice cream scooper. I'm just doing this so then it's easier for me to spread it. So I do have some frosting left over, so I'm just gonna see if I need to add any more. And this is what we are dealing with right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and see. Because that's where it's missing most of the frosting. So I'm just gonna put it on the edge. So this is what the final cake is looking like. I'm just going to take a little napkin and clean up the sides, because there's a lot of frosting that got on the sides of the cake. So I finished frosting my cake, but I do have some leftover frosting. So you can either make less, or you can just store it in the freezer, and you can just have some homemade dulce de leche ice cream. This is how the cake looks. It looks really good. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and get my dulce de leche ready that I set on the side. So I have my dulce de leche ready. Now I'm just gonna cut the tip off. So then I'm just gonna drizzle it on top. So in order to cut the strawberries, you're gonna need a knife. So please be careful with this part and ask your parents if it's okay before you do it. Make sure that you wash your fruit thoroughly, because you don't want any germs or anything on your fruit. So I already cut out my berries. Now I'm going to just place them on the cake. So I'm back. Sorry, the camera cut off, but I was placing on the berries, and this is how the final product looks like. It looks really good. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut myself a slice, and I'll come back to you guys once I'm done doing that. Hi guys, I'm back. I cut myself a slice, and this is how the tres leches is looking. It looks so good, and I cannot wait to dig in. So I'm gonna go ahead and try it. Wow, it's very milky. That means that it really did absorb all the milk. So cheers. Oh my god. This tres leches is so good. I love the top of berries. It helps like add a little bit of refresh to the cake. It's very delicious. I definitely recommend the recipe. I'm gonna go ahead and take another bite. It is very good. So once again, I definitely recommend this recipe. Please comment down below what you guys would like to see me make next, and if you guys enjoy this recipe. I will put the recipe in the comment section down below or the description box, or both, so then you guys can go ahead and go at your own pace while watching the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, bye. I'm a second hello. Ciao.